The Legend of Tarzan is directed by David Yates, the man who brought us some of the best Harry Potter films, as well as this year's upcoming Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, and stars Alexander Skarsgård as the screaming, yelling, ape-loving guy who swings around in vines who's since become civilized. He's married to Jane, played by Margot Robbie. They live in a beautiful home in England, but he gets called back to the jungle when this scheme is brought about by Christoph Waltz's character that enslaves an entire population of people, and he's got to dig inside himself to revert back to that primal instinct that he once had to try to save the jungle once again. Not a single bit of me was excited for this movie. I am not a fan of Tarzan. He is a popular character. He's been around since the early 1900s. He was created by Edgar Rice Burroughs. And I think this film is about as good as a live-action Tarzan film could really be today. It actually did surprise me. It is not great. There are some issues that I have with this movie, but overall, I think it will entertain you, especially if you are a fan of Tarzan, like if he is a character you grew up with, or maybe you love the Disney animated film from 1999. Overall, The Legend of Tarzan is better than I thought it was going to be. There isn't that much to get you into it. It's a little bit hollow emotionally. There's a lot of flashback sequences where you learn about Tarzan's past, things that happened with other tribesmen who lived in the jungle at that time, and it's supposed to make you care and make you more into the moment. But it just didn't do that for me because a lot of it does feel very rushed. Christoph Waltz is fine in the movie as this villain who enslaves Jane and other tribespeople, and Tarzan has to save everybody, and he yells and swings from vines, and you expected all that. And for the most part, it's done fairly well. It's just that at its core, I had a tough time really getting that invested. Alexander Skarsgård is really good as this character. He embodies pretty much everything that the original novels were. He's a kind, generous spirit. He understands humans well, but he also understands animals well. He is huge. Skarsgård is like 6'4", and he's very buff in this movie. He definitely portrays the physicality very well. The story surrounding all of these elements sort of just feels like an excuse to have Tarzan eventually swing around on vines and do his Tarzan yell, and there isn't that much there. And the elements of the story that do feel like they have more emotional weight are so rushed, and things are solved so quickly and sort of brushed aside and never mentioned again that it feels like, wait, why didn't you focus more on that? That was definitely more compelling than Christoph Waltz and his scheme to make money. The best part of this movie for me, and I've been saving this for the end for a reason, Samuel L. Jackson. I didn't know much about his character in this movie. I only saw the teaser, so I didn't know how much he was going to be in this movie, but he has a big, substantial role. He's by far having the most fun of anyone. He feels like he's having fun. And that's another issue I did have with this movie. It's Tarzan. Where's the fun? We need some fun. This movie is really self-serious, and I understand that his wife is kidnapped and people are being enslaved and the jungle animals are being threatened. But this is a guy who swings around on vines in a jungle, screams at the top of his lungs, and can control the animals. This should be a ton of fun, but the movie really gets painfully dramatic and serious, and you're like, where's the fun? Let's have some good times here. And that's why I liked Sam Jackson in this movie so much, because he was the one guy who was like, yeah, that guy's happy to be here. He's smiling. He's having a good time. I'm being more harsh on this movie because I've seen David Yates do great things with the Harry Potter universe, and I expect one of his films to be really good. And this is fine, I think, for a Tarzan movie. I mean, there's not much anticipation from me for Tarzan. And I think they did the best job they could with what they had to work with in regards to Tarzan and bring him into the modern age. It's just that this movie should have been a ton more fun, and it's too serious in my mind. I'm not saying they should have had Phil Collins do the soundtrack or anything, and it's certainly better than whatever the hell that thing was that came out in 2013. The action is exciting. There's a very good opening scene. Some of the music is really good. Skarsgård is great as the character. Margot Robbie is entertaining as Jane. There are some very cool side characters like Samuel L. Jackson. Christoph Waltz is just fine, but the movie itself as a whole just failed to compel me. I'm gonna give The Legend of Tarzan a C+. I do want to give you this caveat though. If you are a huge fan of Tarzan, like if you were just pumped out of your mind for this movie, I think you'll probably really dig it, because it does respect that character. As someone who isn't really a fan of the character though, but does have a knowledge of his roots, I can appreciate that the character is being respected. It just didn't really entertain me that much because the story surrounding all of the cool things you can see, it kind of just deflated in the end. So guys, I'm going to have some more reviews for you coming very soon. The BFG, Spielberg's new movie, is coming out this weekend. I'm going to review all 3 Bourne films before Jason Bourne comes out. I want to do revitalized, new, more in-depth reviews of those movies for you. So I'm going to have the Bourne Identity very soon. I also have 3 retro rewinds I've already filmed. I'm just looking for a nice, sufficient gap in which I can release them. There's been so many new releases. And speaking of Jason Bourne, we are planning something very cool, a very cool Bourne skit that we're going to incorporate with the Jason Bourne review in some way. I'm excited to bring that to you guys. As always, if you like this, you can click right here and get Stuckmanized.